Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining today. Before we get started, let's be sure everyone is able to select their language channel. The options available for this session are English, Spanish, Korean, or original audio, if you would like to hear the audio without interpretation. You'll see the instructions in the 3 different languages, um, flipping here through the slides, and then I'll also walk us through the instructions. For people connecting through a computer, you can choose your language channel by clicking on the interpretation icon to the bottom left that looks like a globe. For people connecting with a mobile device, you can choose your language channel by selecting the More option, then Interpretation, then selecting your language from the available options. With much gratitude to our interpreters today, including our ASL interpreters. We also have live captioning available that can be accessed by clicking on the multimedia viewer box on the right of your screen. Now we will begin. Hello and thank you for joining us today for the 3rd session in our 5-part series, Culturally Rooted Traditions in Healing and Resistance. My name is Gabriela Zapata Alma. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health. It is my pleasure to open our session today. First, we'll go over some technical details of the WebEx software. Your screen might look a little different depending on the kind of technology that you're using to connect. We welcome your thoughts, questions, and resources throughout the session today. The chat box can be found at the bottom right of your screen. You may have to click on the chat icon that looks like a speech bubble to open it. Let's test that chat feature now. Please introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining from today. Excellent, thank you. If you get disconnected at any point, please re-enter the session using the original webinar link that was emailed to you. Sometimes the sound cuts out because of the internet connection. Feel free to call back in if the sound is unclear. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, you can directly chat Carla Alegria, project manager with our center, for assistance. If you're unable to contact Carla, please reach out to WebEx Tech Support. Carla will post that phone number in the chat box. Please feel free to share your questions throughout the session for our question and answer session at the end. Some of our speakers will also be taking questions as they present. A recording of this webinar will be available on our website after today. Please feel free to share it. So now to introduce our speakers. Joining us today, we are thrilled to have Ji-Hye Kim, Executive Director of CanWin, and Han Chung, LCSW ICDVP, Director of Direct Services at CanWin, as well as the advocate, activist, and author, Reina Ortiz. For more information, please check out their bios in the webinar announcement. Before I turn things over to our speakers, I'd like to take a moment to open our space with a poem by Nayira Wahid from her book Salt. The stars will begin falling from your mouth the moment you forgive yourself for the silence you did not create. Salt. Thank you, everyone. I will now welcome Ji-Hye and Hein from CanWin to the virtual stage.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Great. So I'm Ji-Hye Kim, she, her, hers. I'm with CanWin. I'm the executive director. Hein, if you would like to just reintroduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in this presentation. And my name is Hae In Jung. I'm pronounced she, her, hers. I'm a director of direct services at CanWin.
Great. We have a little slideshow for everybody. So if Hein could help put that on, that would be wonderful. Great. So today we're gonna talk about our agency Canwin, and please excuse me if I'm a little bit coughing throughout the presentation and also some post-COVID brain fog. So let us get started. We're gonna talk about our agency Canwin, our roots, and some of the work that we do in survivor advocacy that is culturally rooted in our traditions. So next slide, please. Canwin is a Illinois-based organization, nonprofit organization with the mission to eradicate gender-based violence in the Asian American community and beyond through culturally competent services, community engagement, and advocacy. And our vision is of free, healthy, and safe communities free from violence and oppression for everybody. Our services are open for everyone, regardless of their backgrounds. It's just that our roots and beginning comes from the Korean immigrant community and has expanded to the broader Asian community with us having expertise in the culturally and linguistically specific services for the population. However, our services are open for everybody, free and confidential. So I will talk briefly about our origin story. Next slide, please. So in 1989, a group of Korean activists, Korean women of first and 1.5 and second generation got together in Chicago because they began to recognize that domestic violence is a serious problem in their community. They started meeting with each other, coming to these meetings tired because one of them was holding off, physically intervening a domestic violence situation. Another was housing somebody on their couch for the night. So it was a huge problem, but it seemed like survivors didn't have anywhere to go. So these Canvin founders reached out to the law enforcement and mainstream victim services organizations, but they just did not know how to assist somebody who doesn't speak English and who doesn't, who is not from here and has many barriers they're just not used to seeing. So our co-founder Mimi Kim, she's also an expert on community accountability strategies. She said those organizations they reach out to told us that they heard no stories of domestic violence in the Korean community, nor were they curious about the silence. So they took it upon themselves to create an organization, all volunteer-run organization that would actually support the survivors in the way they needed. Next slide, please. Oh, the one before, yes. So Canwin, they founded Canwin on August 15, 1990, and they intentionally chose this day, the Korean Independence Day, on August 15th. Korea became independent from the Japanese colonial occupation on that day, and they chose this date because they saw connections between all forms of violence, militarism, violence against women, just social inequities. They intentionally made this date because they were making those connections. And then they were committed to providing culturally and linguistically responsive services that would actually resonate with our survivors and their needs in a holistic manner, and always honoring and embracing our roots, where our stories come from, our mothers and grandmothers and our ancestors, to this land of United States, and all the things that our survivors carry, including intergenerational trauma, to be able to achieve a community free from violence. Next is Haynes. Oh, I guess I'll talk about this. So today, Canman today, 32 years later, we are a nonprofit organization. So when the founders founded Canman, it was all volunteer. They just like had one phone that operated as a hotline. But today, we've grown into a nonprofit organization with many different services, as well as community engagement activities to be able to achieve our mission. So our direct services include 24-hour hotline, multilingual in in those calls, and case management, crisis intervention, legal advocacy, transitional housing, whatever the services that are needed to empower the survivors, as well as very active community engagement to be able to grow grassroots leaders in our community to be able to connect with survivors who, very difficult to reach and has many barriers to seeking services. So building trust within our community is incredibly important in a way that can be linguistically accessible. Okay.
Thank you. So I'm going to explain to you about our clienteles, because all our services is to open to everyone, whoever identify themselves as the domestic violence or the sexual assault, the survivors, they can receive our services. However, we are more focused on East Asian immigrants, the clients. Domestic violence survivors who are trying to separate with their abusers itself, they are facing the multiple barriers. But if you are immigrants, they have another layers of the multiple the challenges when they were trying to separate it. There could be lack of housing options, limited access to the survivors, and racial discrimination, isolation, cultural norms, single parenting issues, unfair justice system, and stigmas, and workplace violence. This whole is just one of the examples of their challenges. And I want to just briefly explain about the most the barriers for the immigrant survivors. The first one is language, cultural norms. There are the certain beliefs that about the single mother and divorcees and woman roles within the families in Asian culture, especially for keeping the harmony in the families is really important, and those values are very respected. And the women's, their role is more emphasized to keep those harmonies in the families. So because of the beliefs, cultural norms, the women that they have tended to feel that this is the feeling of guilty, and then can be their fault of the domestic violence. And another the big issues is isolation. These isolations can be happen by the two ways. First is by the abuser. Abuser, they are using a tactic of the isolations to control against the survivors. They are threatening with the immigration status, or that they are not allow them to go to the workplace, or don't does not access to any finance means. So this is all the forms of the isolation by the abuser. Another one is because they are living in such a small immigrant communities, survivors that they have a fear of the revealing of their identity without their consent. So we have many cases, the survivors who are contacted to our services, they are afraid to somebody knows about their situations. And the third one is lack of the language access. As you see, 75% of clients are limited in English proficiency in Canwin. So if you have a limited English proficiency, it will prevent to the access to the social service, any law enforcement, to and also even the understanding about the U.S. systems. These three are three major barriers for the immigrants. So I want to talk about the Asians and why we are focused on the East Asians. Asia is the largest continent in the world. 48 countries located in Asia and 2,300 languages spoken by around 4.46 billion people. This is really diverse and vast area in the world. However, 85% of all Asian Americans is actually 6 origin groups. And they are the China, India, Philippines, Vietnamese, Korean, and Japan. Although the population of these 6 countries are 70% of the Asian population, but still it is overly represented in United States. That is why the people, they have a certain stereotypes of the Asia. However, as I explained about the whole these different various language and cultures, we cannot expertise for the Asian and our limited the capacity of the staffs and also the of the staffs and the capacity. So that is why we has to focus on the East Asia, where our staffs is equipped with a language and we are more familiar with this culture. So that is why we can provide more culturally sensitive services to the East Asian populations. And now the turn to the, okay?
Yes. But that doesn't mean we don't accept survivors where we don't have the expertise. We try to do everything that we can to be able to meet the survivor where they are. In the framework of our work, I don't know if it's as fancy as a framework or just a simple approach to our work is, creating this thing called 친정. And 친정 is a word that exists in almost every East Asian country. 친정 itself is a Korean word that refers to a family a woman is born into, the place she calls home before she leaves it to live with her spouse. So that's the literal translation. But for us, we use 친정 to evoke a sense of safety and siblinghood, familiarity and comfort, the kinds of qualities that we want to nurture within our organization and community. So it doesn't necessarily just, is limited to married women or anyone, but it's literally the sense is to create a safe, non-judgmental space where we can embrace all of ourselves, our roots and everything. And working together to build each other up so that we can have also a space of brave conversations and accountability. And it's a safe space that we envision, and that kind of frameworks all of our work. And it's also, Chinjang is also the name of our annual newsletter. And this painting also is done by a survivor. Next page, please. So examples of creating 친정 through our work is definitely holistic wraparound services. So we don't think of our services as like a siloed approach, like somebody comes in for counseling and that's it. But it's really a holistic manner of allowing somebody to bring their whole selves and their issues and working with them so that it could be like a one-stop shop. Another is survivor leadership building and support group, support networks. Third is peer advocate leadership, growing grassroots leaders, and then also our work in advocacy. So we'll briefly go through all of these.
So I can give you how the holistic wraparound the services looks like. So let's call this client's name is called Kim. She's a first generation undocumented immigrants living in Lake County. She's a single parent with 3 children. She has a limited English proficiency. She does not have a sufficient work history. She does not have a credit history, and she is completely isolated in the community. She was physically and emotionally and verbally sexually abused by her boyfriend. And one night there's a severe violence happens, and her boyfriend was arrested. And police gave the phone number to the client, and client to the contact to us. So first, we start with a crisis intervention. So legal advocate is meeting with the client and accompanied to the goes to the police station, and also they go to the court and meeting with the prosecutors and explain everything about the legal U.S. legal system, what is her legal rights, to provide all this explanation in her own language. And at the same time, the case manager is connected to her to other housing programs because she was about evicted by her house. And while we are trying to protect her by the Safety Home Act, but she was looking for another safe place for moving in. So we are connected to the housing program, and also she needs medical services. We are connected to the volunteer doctor in the communities. And so this is all provide a case management. And then at the same time, the counselor is meeting with her to provide individual counseling. And so also that we are encouraging her to go to the support group. So then she can meet the other clients. So the whole the services is providing, this one is not provided at the one time. Like we are not overrented to the client. This is on the time framing, but direct service staffs, we are working as a team to work on the one client's cases to meet their multiple needs. So this is how the holistic wraparound services looks like. And I can also explain to you about the survivor support group looks like. I think it is better to share with my own experience. The first I joined in the Canwin as a volunteer almost 10 years ago. I was a counselor working in other organizations. So when I first day of my volunteer to helping their support group, I had a certain expectation about the structure of the support group, how it goes. However, when I visited their office, it looks completely different. The women, they were making the food at the kitchen, and the kids are like running around, they are playing each other's, and there's all the laughing and chatting each other's through the dining tables. They were making the simple but very delicious and warm dinners, because I realized all of them that they are actually directly coming from their workplace. So they did not have time to eating the dinner. And then also the food is one of the biggest important welcoming in our culture. So this is the making the food, sharing the food is another the healing process in the support group. And once they finished the dinner, then they were actually starting with the support groups, divided with the children and also the participants. At that time, their supporting group was using the pungmul, that you can see the pictures. This pungmul is the Korean traditional instrument. It is a symbolize nature, the sound of nature. So this is sounds and music, so those are very familiar with them. And while they were learning that the instruments, it may help them more easy to join with the support group to feel the safe, and help them to the healing that they are from the trauma. So what I wanted before the Jihe explained about the concept of the Xinjiang, support group is designed under this concept of the Xinjiang. So clients, when they first meet with the advocate, they first feel what is a safe place. Their story was heard without any judgment and blaming. And then this support group is expanded of the safe place to the survivors. They can share their stories without the judgment, and they become stronger to live the independent life. So this support group is the one of the pathway from the victims to become a survivor and finally to the supporters through their survivor leaderships. So we have different kinds of this support group, and then also we have annual holiday parties. That is for the entire previous clients, and then also our current clients, and then also the hotline volunteers who may receive their first phone calls in the Canwin.
Thank you. Another one is peer advocate leadership. So one thing that we do a lot is a focus group and listening sessions within our target communities so that we can really find out what the needs are. Close to like a couple, 5 or 6 years ago, when we did our focus groups, we learned that people don't feel safe in our communities, and that's from each other. There's so much gossiping, such a small community where you can't really reveal your personal issues. So people didn't feel like they had any space where they can just be themselves and they can bring their issues to each other. So with that, we started a peer advocate leadership program where we're trying to do grassroots leadership building and peer-to-peer education. So once you learn something about gender-based violence, participants are encouraged to at least reach out to one other person to educate and repeat the same information so that people practice normalizing discussions and really find opportunities and courage to talk about these issues. So through that, we've generated many different pals of many different generations, and it took a while to like build the leadership, but now they're taking us to their churches and temples and allowing us to do education there, and they're bringing other people to get involved, or they're finding in connections with survivors and becoming those advocates that we want to be able to have to create the safe space that we need in our community. So it's been really exciting. COVID has put a damper on our wonderful parties and gatherings, but we're hoping to relaunch those again. But virtually, we have also been reaching out to different states. So there are pals in Texas, for example, and Florida and Philadelphia and those places through virtual means. Lastly, we do a lot of different advocacy work because, as mentioned before, our roots and intergeneration connections with our previous generations is incredibly important. And history, whether it's Asian American history or history of around the world, influences how our survivors experiences even today. So one of the things that we are very active in is around the issue of comfort women. And that's a euphemism for those victims and survivors of Japanese military sexual slavery during World War II. There are around, at minimum, 200,000 women and girls, some as young as 9 years old, from all over Asia, Japanese occupied territories were forced into military sexual slavery. So every August we go out to Chicago to hold a rally and a march. So if anyone would like to join us, that would be great. And we also look deeply into the Asian American history and gender-based violence, the connection between two, and how that influences the racial discrimination and the everyday experience of harassment and all of that for our community, especially for women and marginalized gender identity, LGBTQ. So this is a very important project that we're doing in an ongoing fashion, and especially our youth and young people are very much interested in helping us with that. We do a lot of work around racial equity and immigrant justice advocacy. And if Hayne, you could click on the Comfort Women link, that would be great. We have a whole website dedicated to the Comfort Women advocacy issues. So if you would like to check it out there, I'll put the link on the chat. And as I said, every August we go out to streets of Chicago to do a rally and really make the connections between the past and everyday sexual violence that our survivors are experiencing. Great. Yeah, I think that's about it. This was from 2019, but in 2022, it will be August 10th. And I'll send all that information along. I think that is for us. That is it for us.
Thank you. Thank you both. So incredibly important to clarify the undeniable links between interpersonal and systemic violence and how we got here. And thank you for sharing the ways that you integrate culturally rooted approaches. I loved learning about Jung, and I especially loved the support group and developing peer leadership, and then, of course, the visibility and action. So we actually have some questions that folks have already put in the chat. So I'm going to take a moment and ask those. The first question is, this is such an important outreach program. Is this nonprofit nationwide or within a small community?
Well, we're Illinois based, so we're located in Park Ridge and Chicago, but our clients come from, well, most of our clients come from Cook County, DuPage, and Lake County, like the Chicago metropolitan area. But we also have survivors calling from Missouri, Indiana, Wisconsin, because of the lack of culturally specific services in those areas. And we have partner organizations that are mostly in like metropolitan cities like New York and LA, but definitely in between those rural areas, there is a severe lack of supportive services.
Thank you. And then our next question. I'm interested in how you recruit translators to assist these programs. We work to hire bilingual staff, but we can't accommodate all languages.
Yeah, and us neither. It's basically impossible to house all the languages. However, I think it's intention and action. So for us, it's really about connecting with our community members. And then we have this program called Multilingual Advocacy Program, where we're trying to educate and also grow advocates within our own communities. So providing them the 40-hour training, training on interpretation and translation, and also if we're asking for their help, making sure to pay them stipends, compensate for their amazing expertise, and also just really making sure to have language access, language lines, and utilizing those whenever possible, whenever it is needed, and we can't find a translator. Also, you can't find therapists, right? It's very difficult to find therapists who speak different languages. But then doing all that you can to really like brainstorm and make sure to invest human capacity in terms of expanding those language options is the most important.
Yes, thank you so much. And so now I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker, Reina, and we will reserve some more time for question and answer. So if there are more questions, keep them coming. And then Reina will also be taking questions throughout. So it'll be kind of more of a conversation throughout. So Reina, to kind of kick us off here, I would love to hear more about the Vogue School. What's the Vogue School? What's it doing in our community? And what was the inspiration? What do y'all do? And what's the difference it makes?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, one, I just want to thank the presenters. I mean, that presentation was really informative and well thought out. So thank you. So yes, Task Force Prevention and Adolescent Place. I am the Director of Programming at Task Force. It's an LGBT organization on the west side of Chicago. We center Black and Brown LGBT youth. And there's a multitude of resources that we have at Task Force for youth experiencing homelessness. We have housing resources for name change, gender marker change. We have legal resources. Mental health providers are on site in the evening from 6 to 7. Closet for youth that need clothes, hygiene kits, safer sex kits, mental health. I mean, just an abundance of resources. But one of our most important resources that people really don't think about unless you really engage is the Vogue School. The Vogue School is basically a ballet studio on the west side of Chicago. It is for our participants. They come in, the hours are from 5 to 9. Task Force Prevention is 9 North Cicero Avenue, Cicero and Madison on the west side. The kids come in, the youth come in from 5 to 7. And I mean 5 to 9. And you know what? It really is a safe space, as safe as we can make it for Black and Brown LGBT youth on the west side of Chicago. They come in, they do their stretches, they pump a beat, that's what they say, and they start to Vogue. And if anybody has ever seen Vogue and what it looks like from Pose, a new show on Pose, or there's another show on HBO Max called Legendary, which is a Vogue competition. It's basically, it's like urban ballet. That's just how I say it. It's so beautiful. And the kids come in. We call them our kids. I'm a trans woman. I'm Two-Spirit, and I'm an elder in my community, even at 42. So I call them my children when they come into my space. So when they come in, my youth, they come in and they do their stretches and they start to Vogue. And sometimes when I'm not so busy, I just kind of sit there and I watch them dance, and it just is so refreshing to me to be able to assist with providing a space for our youth. It is healing when you watch them dance, you know, to be a Black trans youth in the city experiencing an abundance of obstacles, to be on the west side and just carelessly is like a butterfly, and you just get to watch them just kind of dance. And I just feel so honored and grateful to be present there, to be able to see it. It's physical healing as you watch it, and it's just a beautiful. Anybody is welcome there at that space, Mondays and Wednesdays from 5 to 9. And it's one of our greatest resources. Children, youth come from all over the city to come to the Vogue School to dance. It's beautiful. So I could tell you a little bit about my work and what I do. Like I was talking about Task Force Prevention. We center Black and Brown LGBT youth, and we provide a multitude of realistic, thank you, realistic resources. A lot of our youth, if you think about statistics for Black and Brown LGBT youth, and particularly trans youth, they experience high levels of homelessness. They experience high levels of HIV infection, a lot of trauma that is inflicted onto them. So we try to combat that by just providing a space for them to come, and there's an abundance of resources. And then there's, you know, myself and my staff who are from community. I started my transition in 1993 when I was 13 years old. I was blessed to have Indigenous parents who understood the history of Native Americans and Two-Spiritness, and they recognized who I was as a child and allowed me to transition in a society that really fights against gender, the gender binary. So that love and all that stuff that was given to me through my parents is what I give back to my youth. I've been at task force for 8 years. I'm the program director there, and I am really just there to be of assistance and just help them through the journey of being a gender binary, gender fluid youth in Chicago.
And just thank you. Thank you so much. It's so beautiful. You see folks reacting in the chat too. And as you describe your experience, what you do, I just feel the love and the centering of joy. And I know that a lot of times when we are able to secure and piece together funding, there are so many different boxes to check and so many things that we are supposed to be doing right and promised to do. And so, if you could share at all how you really continue to stay youth centered and center that love and joy, even when there might be things pulling you in a million directions.
Yeah. The youth are the future. The youth are the future of this world, of the society, of humanity as a whole. And once you really understand that, your mindset is about prevention, and it's not just HIV prevention. It's about mental health. It's about spiritual, internal, and I go back to my youth as transitioning in 1993, physically transitioning in Chicago, in the hood of Chicago, with very little support, just my mother. You know what I'm saying? And having to battle. It was very brutal. It was a very brutal. The society and the way it's been constructed is very brutal to people that are gender fluid, that are fighting and trying to chip away at the binary. So having that kind of process and journey as a trans person navigating. Next year will be my 30th anniversary as identifying as Two-Spirit Reina Ortiz, and if anybody understands statistics for trans women of color, like that is something to celebrate. And I still have love in my heart and joy in my spirit. And I want to teach that to my kids. I want to teach that to my youth. I want to instill love, and I want to still, just understanding like, yes, it's rough, or understanding trauma, and also finding solutions, not just talking consistently about the negative. It's like, what do we do as a community to provide solutions, and having a multitude of realistic, unbureaucratic, just simplistic resources at the agencies that I work for just kind of chips away at those kind of like barriers. I need my youth to feel supported. I need my youth to feel loved. I need them to understand that they are worthy and valuable, because they are the future, and that we're going to grow into adults. And hopefully they spread that knowledge onto the next generation, because really it's about humanity. It's not about all these different categories that are placed upon us. So focusing on youth is my biggest part of my work, and it's actually the most beneficial and beautiful.
Yeah. And it as you share, I can hear just the just your nurturing and your motherhood shine through.
Thank you.
And it makes me also think about how Kenwin talked about creating that environment of sisterhood, of family, of Chinjung. And so, would you share with us how you go about really building that environment of family program?
Yeah, thank you. I have to thank my mom. I talk about my mother a lot, but my mother is the one who, when I came out, and you have to understand the trauma of coming out as a gender variant person. Even today, with internet and all this stuff, my mother, she's Apache, Chicana, beautiful indigenous woman, and she knew the cultural aspect of being Two-Spirit, and she instilled love and strength and guidance into me. Very, very, I have all brothers, so to be a feminine child, my mother really gave me the permission to be loving and ferocious at the same time, you know? So I give it to my mother, but also, you know, it's the community. When I got into the community of trans women, I came into a network of just like ferociousness and love. And they taught me about, you know, our history being even in Chicago, you know, trans women being in Chicago and fighting and laying the foundation, and taught me to understand, you know, the obstacles, but how to maneuver through them easily. And so it's just about sharing that knowledge. It's so important. You know, we average 40 youth a night at my space, you know, has 260 to 280 youth a month, you know. So I take every opportunity to share that knowledge, to make sure that, you know, they're taking time to talk to me and I talk to them, and making space and making time. And I'm always on the go. If you see me at task force, I'm just hot-blooded and sweaty, but you know, I really want to make the most of it. Sometimes you only get to see them once, or sometimes, you know, it's very sporadic. So I try my best to be intentional with the energy that I give my youth on an individual basis, and also know that, you know, we support them and we love them.
And we're seeing here in the chat, right? Just all the love pouring right back at you.
Thank you. I'm sweating. I'm nervous for no reason. I just want to thank everybody for the support. You know, trans people in this city are still battling for equality, just like women in general. You know, so we have to start building those networks and supporting each other, and breaking down the barriers that are divisive to us, because divisiveness is how they win, and how we lose. You know, so, you know, thank you all for the support, and you are all, anybody is welcome to task force. Honestly, see LGBT people, see trans youth, understand the battles that we are battling as a community.
Yes. So my next question for you is one about resistance.
Yeah.
And you've started mentioning it, right? Like you've started talking about how important it is to transform these conditions that create situations of just extreme barriers and hardship and trauma. And so what can we do as advocates, as service providers, to create a culture that supports safety and ends gender-based violence and really centers our LGBTQ relatives and young people?
Yeah. I'm going to speak in the context of history. Something that saved me. I found out, I didn't find out until, you know, as I got in depth of it, I didn't understand this country, North America, South America, the Americas, prior to colonization, and how they viewed gender fluidity. You know, Two-Spirit people, there is a multitude of names, but they were respected and loved on this land prior to colonization. And once I really started to understand that, it gave me so much power, because it was stripped of me. It was stripped of my community. Understanding historically, we were shamans, we were mystical beings, we were part of a culture for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and we lost that. Like a lot of people of color, a lot of communities of color, we lose that component. And I think resistance is taking the time to learn it. You know, regardless of wherever you're from, you have to learn as much as you can about your culture and your history, and then also understanding like the damage colonization has caused in multi cultures, and you have to reach back and learn it, and then you have to bring it back out. So for me, resistance is learning my history as a Two-Spirit person, and also, you know, reclaiming it on this land, and then teaching that to other Two-Spirit youth. They come in and they're so strong, and they're kind of and they're ready, and all these things, you know. So yeah, I just want to teach that. And also, let's think about allyship. You know, what does allyship look like? Allyship is an action. It's not just a word. You know, you can be an ally to a community, but never do anything physical. So it kind of loses the momentum of the word. The allyship is an action, you know, and what does that look like? It's different in multiple capacities. When someone says something transphobic and you stop them and you say, you know, that is not right to say, you know, that is an allyship, you know, and it's being and stepping up when no one else is stepping up, you know. So, and then also most importantly is giving trans people the space to save trans people, because no one is going to save the trans community but the trans community itself. Give us our space to heal our community. A lot of allies want to step in and they want to lead. You can't lead this community. Only our own community can lead it. And I think that's something that has been lost in the term allyship.
Yes. Yes. A lot of love coming in through the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes. And so want to give you the floor, Reina, if there's anything else you want to share before we open up for our overall panel of Q&A.
Yeah, thank you. One, like I said, I just want to say thank you for having me. Even though I'm sweating and my light turned off in my office, you know, I'm present, I'm here. I just want to say, you know, trans people, two-spirited people have been on this land for 30,000 years. We will continue to be here. We're not going anywhere. We are fighting and we are liberating ourselves as a community. And we just need the space. You know, we need the space, you know, to kind of liberate our youth and teach and break down ignorance, you know. But I'm just grateful to be here. Like I am just grateful to be in a lot of spaces. So thank you for having me.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Such a pleasure to get to listen to you and learn from you and share space with you. So opening it up, all of our speakers can come back on video. Folks, if you can share any questions that have come up as you've listened to all of our speakers, if you can please share those in the chat. And I actually have one question that came in earlier for Ken Wynn. And that question was, the person said, I would love to receive more information on what meetings with local communities such as churches look like and how those conversations are facilitated.
Conversations in different community spaces.
Yeah, I think it was when you were describing pals, that it was talking about people sharing the messages in their own community spaces and then sometimes inviting Ken Wynn to come in and be a part of those conversations. So what some of that can look like in those different more local contexts.
So it's a lot of investment of time. So with churches, we've been they didn't like us before. There are a lot of victim blaming in the churches, or saying that divorce is never an option, that we hide survivors, all kinds of myths about the work that we do, and just hesitancy in bringing us in. So, that's one of the reasons why we started this peer advocate leadership. So, the pals who were attending, their own churches and could really see like a room for discussions would reach out to their pastors or sometimes their wives or their spouses for more open conversations. And then, little by little asking, oh, maybe Canlin could come in to talk about child abuse prevention. That is, maybe more of something they will be interested versus like, a conversation that could lead to like divorce and stuff like that. So, yeah, little by little, building trust, and then catering, tailoring our curriculum so that we can enter into the space and bringing more work in. Another thing that we did was our pal connected us to like Korean language schools, and other language schools for children. So doing, and then many language schools are housed within churches. So educating their, language school teachers about abuse prevention, and also bringing like teen dating violence topics into that.
Thank you. It's so um, it's so educational to hear about how you had to find those opportunities and really start with a message that could be heard until you would be able to build trust and then build on that message. Very strategic. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, still a long way to go.
So I don't see any other questions coming in. Just a lot of gratitude, a lot of outpouring of gratitude. I see here one question just came in. Do you have services on the West Coast, cities like Portland, Oregon, Seattle? You want to go ahead and I think that's for, I'm guessing that's for Ken Win, but you can both answer that.
I'm searching. I'm sure there's some LGBT trans resources in that area, but I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I'm going to find some right now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elena.
Seattle is where I'm from. So in Seattle, there is a group called API Chaya, and they provide, gender-based violence services to the Asian community, but they have very active LGBTQ program as well. So they're amazing. They're also pioneers in community accountability work, transformative justice. They're just so amazing. API Chaya, I'll put that in the chat. San Francisco, there's Asian Women Shelter. Um, I'll also put that in the chat, and I can just put in the chat a directory of services that provide, has cultural expertise.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much for being a part of this series. It's been so amazing to listen to all of you today, and I really look forward to hearing from folks who attended today, how you use this information, and feel free to reach out and share with us how you're using everything you learned. So now I'm going to start to wrap up our session today. So again, thanking our speakers, thanking our team here at the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health, and thank you to our interpreters, as well as everyone who was able to join us today. There will be a recording of this session on our website in the next week or so. Feel free to share it widely. Once this session closes, there will be a survey. And so that survey link will be in the chat. Please let us know what we did that worked well today, what else will be helpful in the future. And in the next week or so, we'll also send you a follow-up email with the link to the recording, in addition to anything, any slides or handouts that have been mentioned. And all of this will also be available on our website. For folks who would like a certificate of attendance for your time today, there will also be one with the link to the evaluation for the webinar. Thanks again, and we hope that you have a wonderful afternoon.